Orientation. We have parents joining us via Zoom and also a live stream on YouTube. As an FYI, our Zoom has a 500 seat capacity, and when we sent the invitation out, those 500 seats filled in the first hour. So for those of you on the YouTube live stream, not to worry, you're not missing out on anything. There's also a Q&A function on YouTube as there is on Zoom. Later, we'll ask if there's some questions, and we do ask that you use the Q&A feature rather than the chat feature. Behind the scenes tonight, you may not see their faces, but they're here with us tonight. We have staff members from the Office of Admissions, the Office of Student Financial Aid, University Housing and Dining, and Orientation Services. So they'll be reading and responding to those questions as they arrive. I think it's also good to point out that in the last few weeks, we've hosted a few webinars for admitted students, and indeed, maybe some of you attended those. One of those was focused on housing and dining, and another was focused on financial aid. Both of those webinars are archived on our University of Iowa Admissions YouTube page, and I think our folks will put those links up in the Q&A pages as well if you'd like to access those later. Additionally, my colleague in orientation will be talking about some future webinars and some interesting topics that we'll be covering throughout the summer. Once again, I want to congratulate your students on their accomplishments, admission to the University of Iowa, and their decision to be a Hawkeye. I know that this was not the senior year that you and your student envisioned when you started this fall. There's been a lot of change. There's been a lot of disappointment, a lot of uncertainty. I know this has been a time of social distancing at a time that is usually filled with many social opportunities for seniors. Final sports seasons, final performing arts events, prom, graduation ceremonies, and not to mention the students who've been impacted by illness or the death of a loved one during this time. So overall, we really know that there's a real sense of loss among your students. And in spite of all that's happened since mid-March, we hope that your student is excited about their future in Iowa City over the next 4 years. On April 17th, University of Iowa President Harold and Provost Fuentes sent an email to all University of Iowa faculty, staff, and current students. And I'm paraphrasing the email, but it basically said that we are closely monitoring the COVID-19 situation, getting guidance from state and federal agencies. But our focus as an institution is to return to campus in the fall with face-to-face instruction. And that plan for reopening in the fall and that focus has really been reaffirmed time and again by our campus leadership since that email came out in mid-April. Certainly, in thinking about reopening in the fall, safety is our #1 priority. Safety for students, safety for faculty and staff, safety for patients and frontline healthcare workers in the University of Iowa hospitals and clinics. And to that end, a number of task force and committees are formed. They've been meeting daily, and they've been talking about how we can safely reopen campus in the fall. And in many ways, the University of Iowa, I think, is uniquely equipped to handle the challenge that's ahead. Some of you may or may not know that one of the top colleges of public health in the entire country is at the University of Iowa, offering master and doctoral degrees for a number of years, and a few years ago, introducing an undergraduate degree in public health. So we have public health faculty who are epidemiologists and biostatisticians who are working with the Iowa Department of Health, building models and advising officials. Dr. Edith Parker, the Dean of the College of Public Health, is leading a campus task force that's focused on health and safety as it relates to reopening campus. So that task force and Dean Parker are looking at procedures potentially related to social distancing in classrooms, in housing and dining. What will be the PPE practices and requirements that might need to be in place and for whom? They're looking at testing. They're looking at how we can protect vulnerable populations on campus and in the hospitals and clinics. And of course, they're looking at compliance with local, state, and public health departments. So in looking at that, the fall term is just about 3.5 months away. We know, we've talked to many of you, there's a lot of questions and concerns about what campus will look like for your students when they arrive in the fall. And at this time, we don't have specific answers to all those questions, but I do know that we have well-qualified people who are working very diligently to make sure that we can safely reopen in August. And I'm confident that those questions that we don't have answers to now will be answered throughout the summer and prior to your students' arrival in Iowa City. Like I said, our plan, our intent, our goal is to reopen campus in August and return to face-to-face instruction. And like many campuses, we're planning for every possible scenario. And in the event that our campus does not reopen in the fall and courses are taught online only, your student will have a few options. One is to proceed with online coursework. Another is to request a deferral for a future term. And we're currently working out policies right now related to scholarships and financial aid in a deferral situation if courses are online only. Or a third option is to request a refund of your $250 acceptance fee. Certainly, we hope that these are options that we never have to present to your students, and we will be here face-to-face open in the fall. But if we're not, I think you should know there'll be some pretty clear pathways and guidance for your students if we have to make that choice. A few updates from an admission standpoint. You know, your students started their college search, they've been admitted, and now we're kind of nearing the end of kind of official admission business, but there are a few questions we've been getting that I'd like to address from an admission standpoint. The first is we're getting a lot of questions from students saying, my school district is moving to pass no pass or pass no grade for the spring term. How will this impact my scholarships or admission? And the answer is we're going to be collecting final high school transcripts. We're going to be expecting to see a variety of things for this final term across the country and indeed around the world as it relates to high school transcripts. And in every case, we want to give students the benefit of the doubt. So a final transcript that's coming in with no letter grades for the spring, with a bunch of P's for pass, will be just fine. No adverse impact on scholarships, no adverse impact on admission. If you have specific questions about your student's school district or your school or grades or how those may be presented, our admission staff are happy to answer those. But I think by and large, there shouldn't be a whole lot to worry about from the standpoint of how your school district is deciding to award grades this spring. We have a policy of getting a final high school transcript with a graduation date. That date has typically been July 1. We are going to push that final date to August 1st, knowing that some schools may have difficulty issuing a final high school transcript. If August 1st is a challenge for you, happy to work with you. Let our admission staff know, and we can make note of that. My sense in talking to a number of high school counselors from around the country is that there may be slight delays in issuing transcripts, but they should be able to be available fairly soon after high school graduation. And many of your schools will automatically send those to our admission office if you've indicated you're planning to attend the University of Iowa. The final question we've been receiving from many high school seniors are related to AP exams. We know that the College Board has made fairly significant changes this spring related to AP examinations. It's a shortened exam. It's not covering all the material it normally would cover, and it's an at-home exam. But we also know the College Board will still be issuing scores for the exams. And so the University of Iowa will be using whatever score the College Board awards a student, and we will still have the same AP credit policies that have always existed. And so maybe one of my colleagues could put the link up to our AP website. Students take the AP exams this spring and meet the minimum scores. It will show the credit they'll be awarded at the University of Iowa based on those scores. Many of these policies can be found on a special website, admissions.uiowa.edu/coronavirus. We've made some of these updates with respect to AP and transcripts and final high school transcripts. And if there's anything else that we need to address from an admission standpoint, that will be the first place that those new policies will go, to that website. Well, wrapping up, and I know some of you have heard me say this maybe at a previous event, but I'll say it again. And you know, we love working at admissions. Our staff has really enjoyed getting to meet you and your students throughout your students' college search. and through their admissions process. And in some cases, we met your student and you at a college fair when your student was a 10th grader, and we've been communicating back and forth for 2 or 3 years. And even though your student has gone through the admissions process and they'll be enrolled, I hope your students will reach out to our admissions team and consider us a resource if there's ever anything that they need while they're on campus here. But I think one of the purposes of tonight's program is to really introduce you and your students to others on campus who are really charged with helping your student make a successful transition to the University of Iowa. So this list is long. It's individuals from Orientation Services, the Academic Advising Center, advisors in our academic colleges, the Pomerantz Career Center, support staff in academic support and retention, university housing and dining, student life, Center for Diversity Enrichment. The list will go on and on and on. And indeed, you'll become more familiar with all of the great resources here to support your student as we go along here. But tonight, I'm very pleased to be joined by Tina Arthur from Orientation Services and Maureen Schaffer from our Academic Advising Center. Both Tina and Maureen will give you a sense of what you and your student can expect over the coming weeks and months. So thank you again for joining us. Thanks for your time this evening, and we look forward to seeing you all in Iowa City in the fall. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tina Arthur, and I'm the Director of Orientation Services at the University of Iowa. And I'm very excited tonight to share with you what the transition process is going to look like this summer for new students and their families. And while we certainly wish we could host you on campus, please know that we've been intentional about designing this online experience to make transitioning from high school or another institution to the University of Iowa as easy and stress-free as possible. Our plan is to teach new students how to use our systems, connect them with their advisors and their peers, help them navigate the university even from afar, and share and prepare them for next steps. So we started taking orientation reservations back in early March, and we pressed pause on that process in early April when the decision was made to move orientation online. We rearranged our in-person program to an online format and wanted to make sure that we've honored the dates that were already chosen by incoming students for orientation. So students who had already registered for programs kept one of the 2 dates that they had originally signed up for, and we created new spots for the online program for students who didn't yet have a date. If you've paid the acceptance fee and not yet registered for an orientation date, your student can do that and should do that as soon as possible through their admission profile. The orientation date is now the date that students will meet live via Zoom with their advisor and register for classes. Students do not need to be available for that whole day, but should block that day for now if possible, as they will choose their advising appointment and registration time based on their individual advisor's schedule closer to the actual date. It will be important that your student have some flexibility that day. Advisors, just like many of us right now, are juggling working from home and other personal demands, so their availability is going to vary from person to person. The nice thing about this is that they really should be able to accommodate some times that maybe we wouldn't be able to accommodate in a normal year, like later afternoons or evening hours potentially. I'm going to talk more about this scheduling process in just a moment, but please know that we'll work with your student to make sure that we can find a time for that appointment and registration. Our student staff has always played a very important role in creating a positive experience for new students and their families, and this year I expect that that's going to be even more true. We know that your student might be anxious about starting at the university, and we have our full orientation leader staff that's going to connect with your student during that week leading up to their orientation date to help support and prepare them for meeting with their academic advisor. Pre-COVID-19, the university already had an online course to help deliver important information to new students. That required course is called Success at Iowa, and it really delivers important information to students at critical points in their transition. In this way, we spread out vital information and try to take away that feeling that students get that overwhelming feeling when managing large amounts of change. So that course is already open. It opened last Friday, May 1st, to kick off the online orientation experience. And that will continue throughout the summer and into the first 5 weeks of the semester. So that first step of online orientation is completing the Getting Started in Stage 1 sections of the Success at Iowa course. Students can log into that course via Iowa Courses Online or icon.uiowa.edu. And they must complete those first 2 sections at least 7 days prior to their orientation date in order to move along in the process. We created a new online orientation experience in Iowa's Student Information System, the Miui system, and this is the same place that students will log in to access their admissions profile. Starting on Monday, May 11th, students who've completed the introduction in Stage 1 of Success at Iowa will be able to access the Miui orientation tile by logging into Miui with their Hawk ID and password. Same as with the Success at Iowa course, students must complete all of the action items in the Miui tile at least 7 days prior to their orientation date. So completing Success at Iowa and then the Miui orientation tile action steps will prompt an email a week prior to the student's orientation date that will allow your student to go into their advisor's schedule and choose their registration time on their orientation date. To help give you a visual of the steps for completing orientation, here's a graphic of the timeline and steps once a student has completed the Getting Started in Stage 1 sections of the online Success at Iowa course. So first step, the students will then complete the action items in the Miui tile. Everything needs to be completed a week prior to the orientation date. And the Success at Iowa course will give directions exactly on where to go into the My Orientation tile. 7 days prior to their orientation date, your student will receive an email to schedule their academic advising appointment on that orientation date. If there's one thing that you as parents can do and help us out with, it would be to remind your student that checking their University of Iowa email account, probably daily, is a really important thing that they should start practicing. Their orientation leader is going to outreach to them and help them prepare for the appointment and assist them by answering any questions and teaching them about various parts of the university. I would again say this is a place where we could sure use your help. Encourage your student to respond to their orientation leader and to hop on the various opportunities that they're going to present to your student for connecting with them. Our orientation leaders applied for this position back in the fall, and they've been training since January. They are very excited to meet your kids, and they're going to have drop-in virtual office hours to answer questions and get to know your students. So encourage them to take part in that. Advisors will review a student's information and potentially share additional information to help them prepare for the advising conversation. So again, that's going to be an email, and so your students should practice checking their email on the daily. On their orientation date, students will meet with their advisor and register. That's the only time that they really have to be live for orientation. Everything else can be done virtually without necessarily being in a synchronous environment where they have to be online and connected. OLs, the orientation leaders are going to outreach again after registration to connect with your students and make sure they're feeling comfortable with everything about the experience. So hopefully this gives you kind of a nice overview of the advising and registration process. This is a process that you should encourage your student to complete individually. And if possible, the advising appointment should be done as a one-on-one experience between the student and the advisor. The other part of orientation that we know is critical for students to transition is learning about resources, opportunities at the university, and connecting with other new students. Your student can do this by signing up to attend the virtual webinars and student panels, the Hawkeye Hangouts that we're going to be offering, and following us on social media for opportunities to meet with your orientation leaders, or watching any pre-recorded sessions that we'll host on our website. As Kirk mentioned, we've got a lot of campus partners that are excited to share with you various resources and opportunities. And just to name a few that we're planning on having sessions with: housing and dining, counseling services, our offices that focus on getting involved and service, recreation services, parking and transportation, billing and financial aid, student employment and career services, academic resources and support. And that's just to name a few. We're even going to have student panels, so opportunities to jump on and really just ask questions and learn a little bit more about the orientation leaders' experiences. And we have our virtual facts and folklore tour of campus for students and families to learn all about the special places and cool history of different buildings and areas on campus. So we'll connect you to all of those things via our website, newstudents.uiowa.edu. And there we'll have a special online orientation section that lists the full schedule available for you and your students to register for sessions and review content. That will go live also on Monday, May 11th. So you'll have an opportunity to really check out those sessions, pick and choose ones that work into your schedule. And we encourage that you attend these sessions together with your student to learn more about what your student's experience is going to be like at the university. The Miui tile and our student leaders will walk students through orientation step by step so your student knows exactly what to expect. Please encourage them to ask questions throughout the experience. The orientation services staff, and especially our orientation student leaders, are here to help with welcoming you to the university, to Iowa City, and just in general feeling excited about being a Hawkeye. Finally tonight, I just want to share a little bit about what we're planning for August. So in 2020, we'll have our 10th anniversary of our week-long On Iowa Welcome Week program, which has included events like Kickoff at Kinnick, where we teach traditions like the wave, to Convocation, which is the official opening of the academic year. We recognize things might look a little different this year, but we are committed to providing the new students with a memorable experience and a fun and informative week as they transition to the University of Iowa in August. While we aren't exactly sure just right now what the week is going to look like as we wait for guidance from national, state, and local levels around social distancing and events on campus, please know that we are excited to celebrate the beginning of your students' college experience as a Hawkeye. I'm going to turn it over to Maureen in the Academic Advising Center to share a little bit more about what you can expect in that advising and registration process with the advisors.
Thanks, Tina. Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be with you tonight. My name is Maureen Schaffer. I'm a Senior Associate Director at the Academic Advising Center. I also happen to be a fellow parent of a 2020 high school graduate who will be attending the University of Iowa this fall. I want to make sure that you all know that advising units from around campus have been working closely with the staff in orientation and admissions to ensure a smooth process for your students to begin their advising relationship and enroll in their fall semester classes. Academic advising for first-year students really does depend on your student's major and how they're entering the university. Students who are directly admitted into our colleges of business, engineering, nursing, pharmacy, and public health will be advised by professional academic advisors in their college. Advisors or other students who are in majors in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences and the College of Education, along with open majors and students who are in pre-majors, will be advised by advisors at the Academic Advising Center. And by pre-majors, I mean students who might be pre-business or pre-nursing. And while students are in that pre-status, they are in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, and our advisors will work with them as they plan their classes and their future application to their college that they're interested in. The staff at the Academic Advising Center includes 38 professional advisors, and your student will be assigned to an advisor in our office based on the student's major and then the advisor's area of expertise. The orientation tile in Miui that Tina mentioned really has been carefully planned to help walk your student through the various steps they need to prepare for their fall schedule and their advising appointment. A really important part of this process is when students report any college credit that they have through dual enrollment and AP. In order for advisors to give your students the best advice possible, they really need to see all of the credit that your student has coming in. We do realize that AP scores may not be available at the time that your student is meeting with their advisor, but knowing that your student took the AP exam is still helpful. Students through that orientation tile, they'll also learn about placement exams for math, chemistry, and world language. And the information on the orientation tile will provide instructions to students for students to know which exams they need to take. It's really important, as Tina mentioned, that your student read this information carefully so that they can complete the appropriate placement exams prior to their advising appointment. not having placement exams completed prior to their advising appointment will delay them being able to enroll in classes in those subjects on the day that they meet with their advisor. So the format and process for the advising appointment will vary depending on where your student is assigned for advising, but you can be assured that they will receive information in advance for what they can expect from this meeting. The individual advising appointments, we will plan for them to take place via Zoom in situations where that's possible. In some of the colleges, the curriculum for the first semester is somewhat set, whereas the students we're advising at the Academic Advising Center will often have more variety in the choices that they have for their fall schedule. So students advised at the Advising Center will have information shared with them from their advisor about a week before their advising appointment. Advisors will look at students' records in advance, and they'll offer some suggestions for how students will prepare for their advising appointment. While students are doing prep work in advance of the advising appointment, they will be looking through class options, but we don't expect that they will have a finalized schedule prior to talking with us. So I don't want any student to think that they need to have it all figured out prior to talking to us. The advising conversation will really allow us to learn more about your student and for us to make other recommendations for their fall schedule. And in most cases, they will be actually doing the registration while they're in that Zoom meeting with their advisor. As Tina mentioned, the orientation leaders will also be a great help to your students as they have follow-up questions. And students and advisors, certainly we would expect to have contact later in the summer if students have lingering questions or if anything changes, such as when those AP scores come in or transcripts from dual enrollment credit rolls in as well. While the format of our orientation is different this year, our advising approach and our goals for your students' first semester schedule really do remain the same that they would be in any other year. It's really important for us to give individual advice to students based on their background and their goals. We're very fortunate that we have a strong culture of advising on our campus, and that ensures that students have the support and guidance that they need through their time at Iowa, not only during orientation, but throughout their experience. Now, you may be wondering about your role as a parent in this orientation experience. Through all of the programming they offer, certainly orientation does a great job of preparing both parents and students for what they can expect. One thing you can help with ahead of time certainly is to help to encourage your students to be sure to complete all those items on their checklist in preparation for their advising appointments. But I do want to let you know that in our correspondence with students, we do strongly recommend that they meet one-on-one with their academic advisor. We really view that time as an opportunity for us to get to know your student and for us to discuss their academic interests and plans. This is the beginning of their academic journey at the University of Iowa, and our goal is to guide them through that experience and really empower them to take charge. We hope that they'll be excited to share their schedule with you and let you know about their plans and what they talked about with their advisor after that appointment. And as Tina mentioned, all of the colleges, in addition to other departments on campus, will be having online presentations over the summer. That does include the Academic Advising Center. And in our session, as well as the other colleges, we'll really talk about how more in depth about how we go about advising, what students can expect in their first year, and how this whole thing comes together. So more information to come on that in those summer presentations. And while I'll just say to close that while the summer is offering us really some new challenges to adjust to, one thing that really remains the same is that our advisors are eager to work with incoming students and support them as they make this exciting transition to being a college student. And I hope that you can feel just from this presentation tonight that we're not alone in that. We're part of this big team with admissions and orientation and everybody else on campus who are working really, really hard to make this a good experience for all of our students. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over. All three of us panelists will be available to answer questions. And Tina, I'll turn it to you to start that process.
So actually right now, all I can see is one open question, and it says, are you considering having students who can live at home in Iowa stay home so that students who cannot can have single rooms? And I don't know that I have a good answer for this. I'm wondering if maybe Kirk or someone from housing wants to take a stab at this one.
Hi, folks. Good evening. My name is Virginia, and I'm our Director of Housing Administration. Welcome to the University of Iowa from University Housing and Dining. If we missed you last week, you can re-watch the webinar that we hosted and run through a bunch of questions. Marianne, thank you so much for asking about, what we're considering. There are a variety of options that we are currently exploring. Single rooms is just one of them. We are cautiously optimistic and very hopeful to see everyone on campus this fall, but we will very carefully follow the recommendation of the Centers for Disease Control, the Iowa Department of Public Health, campus incident management team, and the Board of Regents. So we don't have an exact answer for you at this time, but know that as soon as we do make final decisions about what our housing options will be, we will put that out to everyone as quickly as possible. So thank you very much.
Tina, do you want to answer the one about the length of time for students in Success at Iowa? Length of time it will take for them to complete that, if you have an estimate?
Sure. So there are 5 stages in the Success at Iowa course, and the Getting Started in Stage 1 section includes a few videos. Most of our videos in the course range between 3 and 8 minutes long, and then there's other content that students need to review as well, and including an assignment that they need to complete, which has about 6 questions in it. And then they'll take a quiz at the end that they need to score at least 80% on in order to pass the section. The course is very intuitive, and it'll be obvious what parts you can be in. So students will start in the Getting Started section, and they'll complete the quiz on that. Once they've passed that at 80%, it opens up Stage 1, and then they'll complete the quiz for that. Stage 2 of the course doesn't actually open until July 1st. So they just need to complete the Getting Started and Stage 1 of the course. And I guess I really don't have a great answer for how long it would take, but I would assume 45 minutes to an hour would probably cover most of the content in the Getting Started in Stage 1 portion of the course.
There have been a few questions on the chat about if the university is only able to offer online coursework, will there be some kind of tuition change? I've not heard any conversations about that. There's a lot of discussions, I think, taking place. I talked about all the scenarios that could happen this fall, and so that could be one of those. I will say when we moved to online instruction this spring, there were some fees returned to our students that were related to on-campus services, and certainly housing and dining did a very transparent formula that prorated the number of days students were contracted for and then how many days they lived in the residence halls. Certainly, if there's any change to fall tuition, that would be something that we would communicate. Again, our hope is we don't have to pursue that option, but I believe if that does come to that, we will have answers to all these questions at that time.
One of the next questions says, will students know by the orientation date whether classes will be taught online or live face-to-face? And that's a great question. My best guess is no. Orientation registration dates start on June 2nd and go through July 9th as of right now. And so definitely those folks in early June, I mean, we would love to have a decision about how we come back to campus and do that safely by that point. But I can't guarantee that we'll know exactly what that looks like. However, I know our advisors will be able to work with students if there are adjustments announced later in the summer for folks who've already registered. And we're anticipating that we'll be in contact with your students, not just with the orientation leaders, but have opportunities to address ongoing information and share updates as they come out over the summer. And so we know that we'll be sharing lots of things throughout the orientation experience, and certainly if things have to adjust, we'll be here to help you walk through that process as well.
A couple of advising related questions that I saw in the Q&A. First of all, there was a question about are students being advised by professors or primary role advisors. So for orientation, the vast majority of you can expect that your student is going to be advised at orientation by somebody who's in a primary advising role. We sometimes call that professional advising role, and that certainly doesn't mean mean any less of the faculty members. It just means that that's their main job. During their time at Iowa, that may change in terms of when they're in their major and in their department. But at orientation, most of the folks that your students will be advised by will be advisors who are in primary advising roles. There was also another question about lab science courses and if we are going to recommend that students hold off on those in the fall. As Tina said, we likely are not going to know the status of the fall semester when we're advising at orientation. We do not have plans at this point to steer students away from those classes. And in fact, in some majors, we would really want students to have those in the fall. Our faculty are working very hard to make sure that they can present the curriculum in a way that for students to learn the material. They had a chance to practice that this spring. So advisors will share the current information that we have with students at orientation, but I can tell you, like, as of today, it's not something we're talking about in advising that across the board we're saying put that off. But we will know more at orientation time, and we also really trust our science departments who are working very hard to do what they can to put these things online if they need to.
There are a couple of questions about Family Weekend, and I will just throw this out there that Family Weekend right now is scheduled at the end of September, and our athletics tickets did go on sale just this past week at hawkeyesports.com. So if you want to check that out, you can see a little bit more about athletics tickets on the athletics website. And like I said, we'll have a Family Weekend is scheduled for the end of September, and we'll have a parent and family calendar that we typically distribute in person at orientation. We'll have a digital copy that we'll plan to share with families later in the summer, and hard copies for students and parents to pick up during August.
And speaking of athletes, there was a question about advising for student athletes and who they see for registration. So the academic advisors, not only in my office, but other places on campus, work closely with the staff in athletic student services. And so your students will meet with their assigned academic advisor for registration, but then they'll also be talking with the folks in athletic student services as well. So it's a good collaboration, and they'll talk to both, but they'll actually register with us.
There's a few more questions about deferring admission and as it relates to scholarships and financial aid. As I said earlier, we're really evaluating on campus now what our policy would be if we have to move to online only. Typically, we would not allow students to defer scholarships to the spring. That's being revisited in the case that we have to be online only. There's a we're also looking at this from a number of angles because there are scholarships awarded by academic colleges and departments, scholarships that are awarded through endowed funds through the University of Iowa Center for Advancement, scholarships awarded by admissions through honors. So we're all trying to get on the same page here to have a cohesive policy. Federal financial aid deferral to the spring, I understand is a little less complicated. That can be much easier. If you look at deferring for a full year, that could get more complicated because at that point, a new FAFSA would be required. So especially for need-based aid, financial need could change from year to year, and that could impact aid. But again, our goal is that we don't have to have here's your options if we're online only. But if we do, all of those policies will be well articulated if and when we have to do that.
There was a question about if we could provide examples for how current classes are being taught now online to give people an idea of what they might expect in the future. And I'm afraid that I can't possibly give due credit to all of the faculty members out there who've been working really hard since mid-March to put their classes online. I think what I can say is that we have amazing people on campus and our Center for Teaching who right away provided information to both faculty and students for online learning. There was a Keep Teaching at Iowa site set up right away and Keep Learning at Iowa for students. So faculty members have been provided a lot of support with this transition. I would say from my advising experience, I'm hearing a variety of things from students. Some smaller classes are certainly being held in real time, whereas maybe a larger lecture, they might be able to watch the lecture on the computer at their leisure whenever they have time, but it doesn't have to be at the same time as everybody else. We are using tools through ICON, which is our online student or course management system, so that students can participate in discussions through ICON. So I would say there just are a variety of different ways that faculty members are adapting in this situation. There was also another question about transcripts and how online courses show up on transcripts, and they are not designated in any way. If somebody took elementary psychology as an online class, it just shows up as the course number and elementary psychology. So the transcript does not differentiate.
There's been a few questions about what's the timeline in terms of a decision and an announcement for going online. And some schools have indicated that there's a date that they're going to make that announcement. I mean, I believe our default position right now is that we're making plans to be here in the fall and to be face-to-face. And I know that hundreds of people are involved in meetings every day talking about that very topic. So in some ways, I think we've made our intention known that we plan to be here in the fall and we're working towards that right now. Could there be something that comes down the road that's not foreseen, or would we get guidance from state or federal authorities that would derail those plans? Certainly a possibility, but you know, our focus right now is doing all that we can do to safely reopen and be face-to-face in the fall. A lot of football ticket questions. Tina, do you want to handle those?
Sure, I can try. There's a couple of things that you can know about football tickets. We get a lot of questions about that during orientation. So you can go on their website, which is, again, is hawkeyesports.com, and look for ticket sales right there. For students, when they log into the Miui Orientation tile, there will actually be information right in the tile about ordering football tickets as well. So if you're not sure, you don't want to navigate, the website on your own. You can wait until the orientation tile in Miui launches on Monday, May 11th, so this coming Monday at noon, and it should be the second thing that students do. So first, students should go in and complete the Getting Started in Stage 1 of Success at Iowa, and then go over to the Miui orientation tile and complete all the action items in there. One of which is just more information about how to buy football tickets if that's something your student wants to do.
There was a question about classes and the fact that our continuing students have already enrolled in classes, and what we do for our incoming students. Do they just get the leftover classes? We actually every year, even not under the circumstances we're under now, we definitely monitor seats in classes, and we do hold seats in classes to ensure that our first year students have availability of courses that they need. So that will remain the same, and that's certainly one of the things that the Academic Advising Center does, is advocate for students and course needs. So we definitely keep an eye on that.
So there's a question about, are we able to change our orientation date that we had originally requested? Students can go into their admission profile where they originally selected the date, and until Monday can look and see if there are dates, if they need to change their date for some reason, they can look and see what other dates are available. Some of our programs are full, and so and after Monday, in order to change your date, you just need to call our office and we will try to accommodate a move. But as we get closer to orientation starting, which our first date will be June 2nd, some of our programs are full, and you might actually get a later date versus an earlier date if that's what you're looking to do at this point. I see a couple of questions about what's the best kind of computer to buy, or what kind of, is there a preference for students on campus? To be honest, we get this question in orientation all the time, and we will have sessions from our Information Technology Services office throughout the summer to help even a deeper dive into what to expect from a tech perspective on campus. But usually what they say is whatever you're comfortable with. So if a student is used to using a Mac, then that would be something that they should maybe continue doing. Or if their preference is a PC, that should be fine too. Occasionally majors might have a preference one over the other, but for the most part, the answer to that question is whatever your student has a preference or is used to using. We've actually gotten through almost all of our questions here. Well, now they're coming back in. There's a question here about how long do placement tests take? It really depends on the test for students. And so we offer placement tests in math, chemistry, and world language. and there are actually two different types of math tests depending on if your student has had calculus at either in high school or at a previous institution. And so the times on those two math tests really vary. One is about a half hour, the other one's more like 90 minutes. For our chemistry test, that one takes about 90 minutes. And for the world language tests, it really depends on the language. So some of them are online and can be done again, about 25 to 30 minutes. Some of them, however, are proctored exams where you'll actually meet either via Zoom or another way with the department, and so those will really vary. So the ones that are online are Spanish, German, French, and Chinese, and all of the other ones you can check out our website on Monday, May 11th. It'll have a lot of information updated about who to contact if you're looking for a placement test in a language other than the four that I just mentioned.
There was a question about PPE for students and faculty and cleaning campus, dining halls, residence hall rooms, classrooms. Those are exactly the kinds of things that the Health and Safety Task Force, led by Dean Parker, is looking at right now, laying out all of those protocols and best practices with the guidance that we're given. So, like I said, I suspect that certainly throughout the summer and indeed by the time students will arrive, we'll have a pretty good understanding of those protocols and may even have a similar webinar to this one focused on health and safety at campus in the fall.
Tina, do you want to address the one about, remind again about the time frame of seeking a possible change to orientation date?
Yep, I was actually just typing an answer to that one, but students can request a change online through their admission profile until this Monday, May 11th. But actually, probably the easiest way if you're looking to change your date at this point is to just call our office, and our phone number is listed right on the page right now. That might actually be the best way to go in and request a change for an orientation date. There is a question about demonstrating how students get into the Success at Iowa course. They log into icon.uiowa.edu. You need to make sure you're in the right session, which is fall 2020, and they should be able to click on the link and go right into the course. If you're having problems, you should email the instructor, and it should have that information right there in the course. I'm trying to remember the email off the top of my head. I don't want to mess it up, so I'm not going to say what I think it is, but it should have contact information if you're having any tech problems right there in the course. Or if you can't find the right email, again, just call our office and we'll be happy to walk you through exactly how to get into the course. There's a question about who should be taking placement exams, and that's a great question. When your student goes into the Miui tile, it'll provide a little bit more direction about placement exams, but essentially, if you are in a major anything tied to the sciences, engineering, Maureen, I'm going to miss a few, so hop on here in a minute. You should plan on taking both math and chemistry placement exams. If you are already in a language and you want to continue in that language, you should also plan on taking the placement exam in the language that you want to continue in. If you're new to a language, you're going to start a new language, there is no need to take a placement exam for that. If you check out our website, the orientation website, which again is newstudents.uiowa.edu, there is a section on placement exams under the orientation tab, and it will give a list of majors that should take math and chemistry placement exams.
there is a question about is there a possibility that the fall semester could be pushed back? And I don't know the specific answer to that question, but I do know that these task force are looking at a number of scenarios, and I have to imagine that a later start date would be one of those scenarios. I don't know that for certain, but it could be a good possibility.
So folks, we're coming up on 7 p.m. And that's 1 hour for the webinar, which is what we had planned. We hope that you found tonight beneficial. We so appreciate you taking time to join us to hear a little bit more about what you can expect from your students' transition to the University of Iowa. And of course, that all of those contact information, the contact numbers up there are there in case you have additional questions, if we can assist in other ways. The Orientation Services staff is very excited to welcome you along with all of our partners at the University of Iowa. And so we look forward to seeing you virtually over the summer and welcoming you to campus, hopefully in August. Thanks so much for joining us.